before you let somebody else love you. I wanna be your someone else. I wanna see you love yourself like I do. People say you've got to love yourself before you let somebody else love you. I wanna be your someone else. I wanna know you love yourself like I do.
Hey everybody, this is your host, Vinyl Man Jebb, and this is the Jebb and Greencast, the first one of 2020. We made it to 2020, guys, and I want to thank everybody last year for being on the show and making it what it is. So this year we're going to continue the same style. Tyler could not make it with us today. It's something come up. He was planned to be, but that's all right. Tyler, hope to get better soon and be up for next week. But we have Peter Green with us of Soulbird. Hi, Peter.
Hiya. How you doing?
All the way from London,
to meet you.
right?
I'm actually just outside London,
cool.
in the county of Kent, in a little town called Beckenham, which is kind of leafy. But yeah, I mean, I lived in London for quite a while.
Oh, that's really awesome because it's nice to have the experience, be able to call across the sea and say, hey, you make music, right?
It's
perfect.
it is kind of one of the things that is just great about the internet. I know it comes in for a lot of criticism, but there's still some really cool things that happen out there. I mean, for example, I've been in touch with someone in Australia
Oh wow,
who
yeah.
had their album cover designed by Dale, who does my stuff.
Oh, that's awesome.
So we kind of linked up across the world, from London to Melbourne to Derbyshire, which I don't think is a connection we would ever have made without the internet.
Nah, yeah, and especially this podcast, I don't think would be made without it. Definitely, because all my guests that I asked through Facebook, and it's really cool to have you guys up. And nobody's too small, nobody's too big for us. It's really cool. It's been a really cool opportunity to have. So welcome aboard.
Thank you.
No problem.
So look, should in case you have any listeners who've tuned in thinking, wow, Peter Green, blues rock legend from Fleetwood Mac, can I just point out I'm not him?
Nah, guys, I made the
If you
same
want
mistake.
it's a thing I get a lot on Facebook, particularly from kind of um, Americans, Americans from the kind of like the baby boomer generation.
Nah.
And I wish I was, because I think the guy's an absolute genius. I love, I love what he did with Fleetwood Mac. I quite like a bit of what he did after, but he's a lot taller than me. I don't have curly hair. I would never be able to afford a 1959 Les Paul, and I'm just not a blues genius.
I made the same mistake, guys. And that's what got you on the show, though. I was like, you know what, you make music, though, so I'd definitely love to have you on. So we started off the episode with your song "Peacock Eyes." If you want to tell us more about that song.
Sure. Peacock Eyes is from an album that I'm have been working on for the last few months in Rodell Studios with Dan Cooper, who's kind of recorded and played a lot of the instruments, particularly the mellotron and the Hammond organ, on a lot of my stuff over the last 4 or 5 years. I guess it's kind of at the same time it's a song about believing in yourself, and a love song, and I think the person it's written for probably knows who they are. But yeah, I mean, the idea is about being as proud as a peacock and looking at yourself with love and pride. What I like about it, well, I like everything about it really, but I kind of like the way that it goes from a very gentle, almost folk rock intro to it's kind of like funky and slightly snarly chorus, and it's got a really, really nice mellotron on it.
And I, of course, love Mellotron ever since the King Crimson's discovery. For me, I love Mellotron. Fripp is one of my favorites.
I don't know that much about the use of it in prog rock, I must admit. I kind of know, I know about it with the Beatles and the Moody Blues, so I kind of think of it as a pop instrument. But it's just, yeah, I just love hearing that. That Strawberry Fields.
Yeah,
I
just heard
love,
the Moody Blues
again,
influence there too, as well, and the Beatles.
Something that computers have given us.
Yeah.
Is the ability to have this, this fantastically complicated 1960s instrument now. That's really great.
And everybody can access it now, which is really cool because it adds a lot to songs, definitely, without a doubt.
Mm.
So what would you say your biggest influence are? I remember you mentioned the Byrds in emails to me, and Elvis Costello as well.
Well, I'm kind of going to give this away now by quoting Bob Dylan, who said, "Just open your ears and you're influenced."
I like that.
It's good, isn't it?
Yeah, I love Bob Dylan,
and it's so true. Certainly the Byrds were one of the first things that I heard that made me think, that's the kind of music I'd like to make. Although I retired hurt from playing 12-string guitar.
So you want to be a rock and roll star.
But when I was a kid, I had a copy of the Byrds' Greatest Hits and a stereo with one speaker that would cut in and out, and from that I kind of heard David Crosby's fantastic scything rhythm guitar on so many of those songs. I thought, yeah, that's good. I like that. That's what I like.
You have the 8 Miles High mixed in there too. I love the Byrds, so it's like it's the rhythm and then getting Crosby just starting out too is amazing.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that's really cool about the Birds. I mean, it's true of a few other kind of great '60s bands, but they kind of they did one album in one style, and then it seemed like they said, okay, we've done that, let's move on. So after doing Turn Turn Turn, um, the next album is very, very different. All those songs are really fast. All those things like John Riley have a string section brought in, and then they moved on to what's the next one? 5D. Yeah,
And then
must
it's
be.
all of a sudden you got like all this change, more
And suddenly
psychedelic.
they're writing their own songs, and
Yeah.
they're kind of introducing psychedelia. They're introducing a thing on. But by the time of Notorious Bird Brothers, which is just a fantastic record. I mean, and that's only like what 4 years after making their first record, maybe not that much. They're talking about old John Robertson. Where they go, well, we wrote this country song, and then this Baroque string quartet just happened to sit down in the middle of it, and I just kind of, yeah, why not? Why not take those kind of imaginative leaps? But the other thing about the Birds for me is that they were kind of a portal to a lot of other things. Because if it hadn't been for that, looking at the writing credits on that first Birds album, I wouldn't have heard of Bob Dylan.
Yeah, because the
So
Birds were
that's
probably like the best band to cover the Bob Dylan. They did it. I feel like Bob Dylan every time he tried to make a song, he was like worried the Birds were going to do it better. Like
see,
Mr. Tambourine Man's one of my
given
favorites.
if I was getting if I was getting the writers' royalties, I wouldn't have worried.
True, true, true.
And I mean, and just kind of like later on, they made a joke out of it. On the Ballad of Easy Rider, Dylan wrote the first two lines of lyrics,
Hmm.
and said, give this to McGuinn, he'll know what to do.
That's right. That's right. I saw Roger McQuinn recently. He came around to a little concert hall called the FTC in Connecticut, and it was really cool getting to see rock royalty. And I was only a couple seats away, and a couple rows back, and just seeing him. And he mentioned that story, and I was like, "That's really, really cool." That like they actually kind of were cool with it. It was just something that was like really, because Dylan's awesome, one of my favorite writers of all time, and I kind of strive to be the next Bob Dylan. I mean, you can't be him, but striving musically to try to do what he was doing. So it's really cool.
Yeah, definitely. What's McGuinn playing these days? I think the last time I saw him, he was playing a nine-string guitar.
Oh, I think he was playing the 12 string for the show, but he had a couple. He had the acoustic, and then he also had the banjo too. Still playing his
Oh,
banjo, which was
cool.
really. He did like a whole retrospective of his whole career and like storytelling and
Hmm.
everything. It was a really unique experience. It was something I'll hold dear because I've been to shows like currently like seeing Ken Stringfellow of the Posies, one of my favorite power pop bands from the '90s.
Yeah.
Actually seeing him and meeting him, and now we're like really close friends. I'll be doing a song with him soon, so it'd be really cool,
Oh,
and just stuff like
brilliant.
that. And I'm a big Posies fan, so growing up with them was something like amazing to be able to actually talk to them and what started the podcast, but to have like that influence and then to to be close in those shows, so I'm used to it, but then to go to see a rock royalty, it's a whole different level, and to be only a couple rows away and to hear him cover Tom Petty and everybody's crying, and it was just a really good experience. And Roger's awesome, one of my favorites. So and then my
He,
dad
he's
was a huge Birds fan too, so it
he
works out.
comes across as a really nice guy. Um,
Very
I mean,
humble too.
I know I know there are a lot of everybody's got their own point of view about why people came and went in that band. And I guess, yeah, I guess everybody who was ever a bird has got a right to their version of that story.
Yeah. I'll have to have you on for a Birds episode. What we're trying to do is have a thing called Band Chat as well. And we've done one so far with the Posies. We actually talked about Big Star, so it's really cool. But we'll have you on again and have you talk about the Birds. We could have other people on,
Oh,
get
you
like a
can have me
panel
on to
of
talk
guests.
about Big Star, mate.
Oh, I love Big Star, one of my favorites. Alex Chilton, and it just something I got into because of the Posies joining in and then actually learning about them. But I love Big Star, and it's the whole Memphis area and that whole scene back then is something to really dig into. There's a catalog there.
I mean, the only other thing I know about from that scene is Blue Ash.
I've heard of them too. Yeah, Blue
Yeah,
Ash.
I was gonna ask if you could recommend one of their albums. Okay,
Yeah, I'll have to look
I'll
into
go
them.
on asking.
Yeah. Now I got something to look up too. Yeah, I'm not sure. For Big Star, I definitely could recommend the number one record, which is their first album, and I think Radio City is the one that has September Girls on it. But all their whole thing, Big Star's whole thing, is really good at catalog stuff. But Blue Ash I've
Yeah.
heard of, but I don't know too much about them. I'm definitely right after this podcast. I'm looking into them now. I'll have to share what I
Cool.
find. So yeah, we'll go. How did the Soulbird project come to be? That was my next question.
Okay. Well, I'd like all these things always seem to be with me. Um, Almost completely by accident, I went into a guitar shop in the town next to me, just to have a look, and discovered that there was somebody, Dan, working a fully fledged recording studio in the back of the shop. So I booked some time with him. We did one song, and I thought, this is great. And it kind of went from there. So those we did a couple of albums. And when I say albums, I mean basically there's like 50 copies of each of these things, but they are online. We did those, and under the name The Revox. Then I discovered from the great Dale Simpson, who did the cover art, that there was a band in Switzerland called The Revox. And they'd asked him to do a cover for a single, so I was scouting about for a name change. I'm still interested to know what a Swiss garage band does, by the way. What's in a Swiss garage? 2 Lamborghinis and a snowplow. But so yeah, I was looking around for a name, and by that time, I'd recruited David as a co-lead vocalist, and I'd written a song called Soulbird, and I kind of thought, oh, that would make a nice title for the album. And after a lot of toing and froing, we kind of thought, actually, Soulbird is a really great band name. The name itself comes from a children's poem. I don't know if you know that.
No, I'll have to look into that as well.
I can't remember right now who wrote it, but it's lovely. It's about that feeling that your soul wants to get up and fly away. Sometimes it doesn't quite fit because it wants to be free. And I thought, do you know what? I've written about 10 songs on this record about that feeling.
Perfect. It's perfect timing. It's lovely because I've written songs like that as well, where you'll write something and then next minute you know something's come out of nowhere and you're like, I wrote about that. That's awesome.
Yeah, isn't it great when that happens?
Yeah,
though,
it makes you think I'm doing it
kind
right.
of think, and also when you write something and then you kind of come back to it and think, oh, actually, it's about that. Yeah, like the meaning of it kind of reveals itself.
Yeah, and you wrote it, but it like changes. And I've written songs that I've never like released, and now I have a reason too, because they kind of like the lyrics kind of flow with something that's just happened recently or something that's going on. I'm like, oh my gosh, they've just been sitting. But it's cool that I wrote that before, you know.
Mm.
Yeah, I like that. It's an interesting pattern of songwriting style, you know.
And also, I kind of need to say, yeah, that I could probably compile, like an ornithology. I write a lot of songs about birds, and I just kind of want to make the point that very few of them are metaphorical birds. That they are quite literal. I kind of
Ah,
know what kind of bird they are in every song. There's a couple of songs about um, visiting visiting Brighton that have got seagulls in them. There's a couple of songs about going back to my parents' place in the West Country that have got crows and
ah.
ravens and magpies in them because where they lived was farmland. There's at least, well, I mean, it turns up as the band logo anyway, but there are a couple with swallows because I find them pretty symbolically interesting. You call them barn swallows over there,
Oh,
I
okay.
think.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Beautiful birds.
but in I mean, I like them because to me they represent summer, and there's actually an old English saying about one swallow doesn't make a summer because they actually fly from thousands of miles to be here. And that theme is also reflected in them when they turn up in tattooists or in tattoos. It was um, a Navy thing, and I think still a US Navy thing, where if you'd sailed 1,000 miles, you would have a swallow tattooed on your arm.
Ah, interesting.
So I just kind of think that's again that's just a nice message. Kind of like songs as tattoo flash. Why not?
And it's
You
and
know,
it's
it's
fun.
if
It's something different too. It's not everybody does the same thing. You know, it's really cool to have a unique message and a unique way of writing the songs as well. I enjoy that.
cool.
Yeah.
Um, okay, I think we've exhausted that. Next
Perfect.
question.
Yeah, and I was gonna say you have many songs written, right? Do you know a number? I know it's roughly a hard question probably to answer, but how many songs have you written over the years? Do you have a
Over
number?
the years, probably it's I'm quite lazy. So if there are back in the 80s, I was in a band called Hearts on Fire, um, and I think I think that's 15 songs that I wrote and recorded for that.
Oh, that's awesome.
And if we're working on the basis that as the Revox and Soulbird, I'm now on album 5. I guess that's 60 to
Oh,
65 songs,
congratulations.
but
That's awesome.
I don't kind. Well, it's a hobby, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
I like writing, but what I really love is going into the studio and hearing the magic that Dan
Hmm.
brings to it as a producer, and
Having
kind
something you take, and I've noticed the Beatles influence on when I put the headphones on to listen with the panning. I've noticed
of
the
okay, cool.
sound of the Beatles. I've noticed the left and right and action happening because that's something I want to learn. Something that I would have Tyler, my co-host here, who could make it today, does that. He does like the panning stuff. So I'm actually gonna be working with him soon to learn because I've always wanted to. I always have everything in the middle, and I'm like, nah, I want the sound to explode. And it's cool to. It's probably to have that producer to be able to do that and to hear that is
Mm.
probably a like I can't wait for that first chance. That's gonna be something really cool.
Those well, I mean, again, if it were if it works for the song, because if
Hmm.
it doesn't, it can sound really gimmicky.
Yeah.
I was talking to somebody the other day about so many um, so many 80s records that sounded great in the 80s, now sound very 80s.
And
Yeah,
they all suffer the same sound effect. Like, oh, it sounds like this. You
yeah,
can mix them and you think it's the same band. Yeah, I know.
and they've all got that same kind of.
Hmm.
They've got that same everything up front ambient production
Like
where
The Cure mixed in with like other bands from that time period. And hey, they're great bands, but that all does kind of mix in, and it's like, oh, wait a second.
okay, yeah, it's kind of interesting to see that, for example, REM have decided
Hmm.
to completely remix Monster because I mean I think it probably is a much better record than it sounded at the time.
I have to check that out because I'm a huge REM fan, and I noticed that they were redoing it. I have to re-listen to it
Mm.
now. I'll have to listen to the remastered now because I'm excited
No,
for that.
I haven't listened to the remaster, but I was listening to them talk about it on the radio, and I
I'll have
thought,
to check that out.
yeah, that they
Definitely.
were talking about the influences on it of things like glam rock and Wire. And thinking, I never heard that. I didn't hear that. I want to
Hmm.
hear that now.
Yeah,
And if they remixed it to bring out that sound, that
it's like
yeah, I'm
the
definitely.
Posies with their first album Failure, which came out in '88. I remember Ken mentioning that the XTC and was a big vibe, and I didn't hear that right away either. I heard like other things like the Cure for me because it's a little bit later, and I'm younger, so growing up is different bands coming up. But I noticed like the XTC now, and I love XTC,
Mhm.
so I'm like that was really cool that like you notice things after somebody mentions it, and you're like, oh yeah,
Yeah,
now I hear it. So it's just really
and
cool, and REM is
that's
one of my favorites too, so that's awesome.
and that's kind of what I mean about records that open doors. It's a
Mm.
great thing. Yeah, I mean my favorite XTC is Dukes of the Stratosphere
Oh yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
but it wasn't until you'd heard that and you go, oh wow, they based that on the Zombies, or they've gone for a yard, gone for a Yardbirds guitar sound here, and that kind of makes you go. Then you listen to their other stuff, like their stuff that isn't trying to be
Yeah,
retro,
and you go back
and you
into their
can hear those
catalog. Yeah.
influences. You can hear those influences again. You think, oh, I think it makes you appreciate that stuff more.
I think like for like a band like Pink Floyd, where people got into them because of Dark Side of the Moon, then they go back and wait, there's a guy named Sid Barrett, and they go back into the early catalog and hear all the psychedelic stuff, which is totally different, and it's really cool because I love all of Pink Floyd, and I actually like the Sid Barrett era more than probably the later stuff, even though I love Pink Floyd and I love the later stuff like The Wall and stuff like that. Like that's something that's always gonna be there. But I've always been like a sucker for the first album, Pipers at the Gates of Dawn, and a couple of the other early stuff, and I really enjoy that sound that they had because it was something so different for the time.
Yeah. There's kind of there's, I, I mean, there's actual noises on that
Yeah,
record that I
and
don't think, and to this day, I'm not. Is that Sid's guitar? Is that a keyboard?
like, how
Is
did
that
they make it? Because they
random
don't have all
noise?
that
Yeah,
stuff now. Like you can easily make sound effects with a computer, and back then they didn't have that. And I love like talking to
yeah,
my dad about that as well, and doing our stuff. And it's really cool to see that that you could make those sound like I think Sid Barrett did a lot of the sound effects, like the bird calling and stuff. That was all him, like doing it like with his mouth. And I was like, that's really cool. Like recently, there's a band called Bentwin that I got into. It's a psych garage rock band from I'm trying to think, Canada, I think. And they opened for the Doors at a festival. And this is a live recording of that festival. And there's not much on them, but they're really cool. And there's one song where they're just making bird calls the whole time, like in the between, like guitar riffs going really heavy. And I'm like,
hmm
they did that live. That's incredible that they were able to make those sounds, and you can hear the guitar like getting like it's strangling. It's like, what is this? So it's just really
wow.
cool. Yeah.
Oh, I'll check that out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll send you a link your way because it's really cool. It's
Oh,
a
thank
really good
you.
album. But yeah, we can wrap up one more question for you, and then we're gonna head
Sure.
end off. And it's awesome having you on. Really appreciate it.
I
Um,
I really appreciate you inviting me. Thanks a
oh,
lot.
no problem. We'll have the episode up tonight, and it'll be perfect. Get it right on. It'll be the first of the year, so thank you. And Tyler wanted to ask you if you were influenced by Emerson, Lake, and Palmer at all.
Um, Again, I'm going to answer this question with a quote.
Okay.
Um, John McGeoch from Susie and the Banshees was once asked if he was influenced by Jimi Hendrix, and his
All
ice
right.
cool answer was, "You're as influenced as much by what you reject as by what you imitate."
Ah. That's actually a really good quote. Say that again. I'm gonna have it to where it's
It's
perfect. I like that.
sure. You're influenced as much by what you reject as you are by what you imitate.
I really like that because it really shows that you kind of like I've rejected pop, and now I'm like not power pop, but like the new pop, and I've been catching
Hmm.
myself making new pop songs, and I'm like, what am I doing? But then they turn out really good, and I'm like, so it does actually. It's really because it's the philosophy behind that quote is really good. I really like that.
Well, I kind of I kind of grew up in an environment where everybody around me liked progressive rock,
Hmm.
and I couldn't see it. I really couldn't see it. I was kind of that, but as a result of that, um, I got into things like Credence and Canned Heat, and much simpler.
Like the blues side of it, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and Motown and Stax, things that I'd kind of missed before. Um, so yeah, I think being influenced by Emerson, Lake and Palmer is, I would never listen to them, but
I
but
understand,
that
yeah.
that kind of that kind of the existence of that stuff in the culture when I was a kid actually helped me find a lot of things that I like instead.
Oh,
You
and
know,
that's actually a really cool way to put it, though. I enjoy
it's kind
that.
of like, oh no, there, there is not, there is nothing in Yes or Genesis for me. So what else can I find?
Yeah, I see that. That's actually really cool, and like I said, I really enjoy that quote. That was awesome. And then we're gonna
please,
end.
please feel free
I'll definitely.
to use it.
I
It's
would love to put that. I'm gonna put that. You know what? You're gonna see it. I'll put it up on the Facebook right after I edit this episode because I'll hear it again and I'll be like, all right, I'm putting that up. I'll put that up. And who was the quote maker? I should say.
I am sure it's John McGeoch from Susie and the Banshees.
All right, cool. Because I'll look that up after I edit the episode, and I'll hear it again while editing, and then I'll make sure. Because I'm not gonna take anything out. I'm just gonna quickly listen, make sure everything was good volume wise. But it's just really cool to have that quote, and I'll definitely quote that in the description, and I'll put it up so everybody can enjoy that. Because I think it lets you think life a little bit differently. That you're influenced by things you don't always know you're being influenced by, which is really cool.
I think that goes two ways. I mean, I think there are
Hmm.
things that you absolutely love that you think, well, that, you know, I, I don't I don't hear Randy Newman in my music, um, but I think he's a genius. You know, it's but yeah, I think your influence, you can embrace things without being influenced them, and you can be
Yeah.
influenced to go somewhere else by things. You know, I know, I definitely know people who've become really great jazz players because they dislike the way pop music went.
And they go for the other side of like the side of it, and I really enjoy that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so yeah, again, we're back to the Bob Dylan thing. Open your ears and you're influenced.
I like that's awesome, and I strive when I do these podcasts, and we strive as the both of us too, is to learn something new, every time, and that's something I learned that like that quote from Bob Dylan is probably really cool, and the quote again, the one just recently, both of
Hmm.
them real two new. Yeah, I learned two new quotes that I really enjoy. Thank you.
Good. Well, uh, I've sent you some more of my stuff, so I hope
Perfect. Yeah, definitely.
maybe I've got some quotes in there that would interest and
Perfect.
inspire
That's
you as well.
definitely. I enjoyed.
I hope so.
I was listening to Sheeting Kind off Soul
Oh
Trader.
yeah,
I really enjoyed that song. And I think I'm gonna go with that song to end the episode with because I
okay.
really enjoyed that and you sent that one after. So if you want to explain that one
Hmm.
and then we'll fade right into the song.
That's basically that's a song that um, the drummer came up with a kind of Motown beat,
Ooh.
and the bass player came up with this kind of loping chord sequence, and before very long, we had this song that wasn't like anything else we do.
And it just came out of that's really cool. It's just something that you don't expect.
It's something that the real musicians in the band created. All I did was write some words for it.
Perfect. The magic, and then that's that magic behind the writing for it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
We'll fade right into it. Thanks again, Peter Green, for coming on to the Jebb and Green cast, and really appreciate it. And the first one of the year. So happy New Year, everybody! 2020. Hopefully we do some music.
Happy New Year, everybody! Hope you find some great new music this year.
Bringing you a hopeless case of hopefulness. I'm bringing you a hopeless case of tenderness. I'm bringing you a hopeless case